I always love having guests on Mid-Mornings with Amy, and we have Laura Godby in the studio with us this morning. Laura is a grief counselor with Lake Cumberland Hospice. So good morning, Laura.
Good morning, Amy.
We're going to talk about something this morning that can be a little difficult to talk about. It's not something a lot of people want to think about, but we do need to think about it sometimes, and that is hospice, who you are and what you do. There can be some misconceptions about hospice. So before we talk about the reason that I really wanted you to come today, and that's to talk about Camp Promise, let's talk about hospice.
Okay. A lot of people, hospice conjures up a variety of emotions in a lot of people's hearts. Like you said, it is a very hard subject to talk about, but hospice, it basically is just a holistic philosophy and model of care that really seeks to maintain a sense of well-being for the whole person. A lot of people think that hospice is just health care for those who are terminally ill, but we are so much more, and it really is our heart to help the whole person and the whole family. So we focus on the body, but we also focus on the mind and the spirit by offering medical interventions and support and so many resources to the family and assistance during those really difficult times.
You had mentioned that when a family calls hospice to come into a home, you're usually only there about 8 days, and you focus on emergency situations in those 8 days, but you want people to contact you sooner so that you can help the whole person and not just the sickness.
Absolutely. That over the past year, that has been our average length of stay, and it just breaks our hearts because we want to be able to get in sooner, and I know that call is so hard for families to make, to get to that point. But it's not a death sentence. A lot of people think, oh gosh, we're giving up. And some people even think that we have a shot that is going to put people out of their misery or things like that. But that is not what we do at all. We are there to help. We want them to live, but we focus on the quality of their life. In those last days, we want to get out there sooner and get to help families sooner.
When you do come into a home, what are some of the first things you do, just in case someone listening might be thinking it might be time to call hospice for someone that they love? What do you do when you come into a home?
And I just want to say that's a good point, Amy. We always encourage families, if you're thinking about hospice, it's time that you make that call. So if anyone's out there listening and you're thinking that even against all hope, you're thinking that it might be time to call hospice, go ahead and call us, because we want to help. First thing, when you call in, anybody can make a referral to hospice. It doesn't have to come from a doctor. So, a family member can call in and we will get a nurse to come out and meet your loved one and talk to them, and just kind of assess the situation to see what's going on medically with them, to see if they will qualify for hospice care. And then once they are qualified for that care, then there's a nurse that will come out and figure out exactly what all's going on physically. What do we need to do here to make them comfortable, to help them feel better? And then we also have a social worker and a chaplain that will also come out and do visits to help address those, what's going on, all the things that are going on in their mind, in the family's mind, and in their spirit as well, and how we can help make them comfortable there too.
How many people do you all have on staff that work for Hospice of Lake Cumberland?
I have no idea. That question I was not prepared for. I would guess.
What do you serve? You serve a pretty large territory in terms of families that you help.
7 counties.
7 counties.
We have an office based here in Somerset, and also an office in Monticello. And so we serve, there's Russell, Clinton, Casey, Cumberland, Wayne, Macquarie, Pulaski. Yeah, so that's 7.
I ask about the number of people you all have on staff because you've mentioned you have nurses, you have chaplains, you have grief counselors, you have a lot of people with a lot of different expertise who can come into the home to do a lot of different things for the family.
Absolutely, and there's a volunteer coordinator. It takes tons of support staff administratively to bring in some seamless care. So, I'm guessing we would have somewhere around 60 plus. But that's just a guess on my part.
Do you find that when hospice comes into a home for the first time, and again, like you said, I cannot imagine how difficult that first call must be to contact hospice. Do you find that the families are a little bit more at ease once that first visit is over with and
Yes.
you come into the home?
Absolutely. They see that we're not the Grim Reaper. We don't come in speaking gloom and doom. Our nurses and the clinical staff that are in the home, they're full of life, and they strive to make every moment count and for every moment to be lived to its fullest. And so they come in joking, and, it's not, like you said, that first visit, though, everyone is biting their nails and nervous about how that's going to happen. But we really try to make the families as comfortable and as at ease as possible.
Comfortable and happy as possible.
Yeah.
We're talking with Laura Godby this morning. She is a grief counselor with the Hospice of Lake Cumberland. And when we come back, we're going to talk about something called Camp Promise. Camp Promise, it's a 3-day camp for grieving children. Talking to your children about the loss of a loved one can be difficult. So Laura will tell us all about Camp Promise. You're listening to Mid-Mornings with Amy on Tuesday, November 12th, a snowy morning here in Somerset. Good morning. We're talking with Laura Godby this morning. She is a grief counselor with Hospice of Lake Cumberland, and we've been talking about hospice and the fact that it can be a very scary word, but hospice focuses on quality of life. And Camp Promise, I'm really excited to talk about Camp Promise, and that's why I wanted you to come on the show several weeks ago. Talk about Camp Promise. What is it?
Well, Camp Promise is a 3-day camp that is designed for children ages 6 to 16, which is a large age range, but we want to reach out and serve those children, just to help them on their grief journey. We realize that children grieve differently than adults, and so we have designed this camp very compassionately for children who are grieving the death of a loved one. And every detail comes together to help them express and process their grief, to try to promote healing and to increase their coping skills. And one of the great things that hospice, or that camp also does for these children, is it helps them to see that they're not the only ones that are feeling these scary feelings and this mixture of feelings. And so they come together with about 40 other children to help walk through this grief journey. Explaining
Death to anyone can be very complicated, but especially to a child who might not understand all those feelings and emotions, as you say, and especially when it's been a parent or a sibling or maybe a close grandparent. And how can a family contact Camp Promise if they have a child in their family who has experienced the loss of someone very close?
Just simply calling our office. It's 1-800-937-9596. They can ask to speak with Laura Godby, or Tammy Flores is the other grief counselor. She's actually our bereavement coordinator. Camp was birthed in her heart, and she is an excellent lady, and either one of us would be more than happy to talk with anyone who has a child that is grieving.
And we will put all of your contact information on our Facebook page at Somerset 106 so that people can get your number and your information if they want to contact you. What really happens at Camp Promise? It's held in Jabez, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm. That's right. It's not the 4-H camp. A lot of people think that that's where we are, but it's called Camp Jabez on the Cumberland, and so it's actually just a little bit past Camp Jabez, way out in the middle of nowhere, but it's a perfect place for children just to get away. We have a blast. We have so much fun. We don't just sit around and cry. Contrary to popular belief, we believe, though, first in creating a safe and a nurturing environment for these children to be able to express themselves. We actually break the children into groups, so even though there are around 40 campers, they have a very small group of 5 to 6 children, and they build such a camaraderie there with them. We do fishing and horseback riding, lots of fun, therapeutic, oftentimes art-related activities to help them, like I said before, express their feelings. Kids you don't just sit down and talk to them, but they need to express themselves in a variety of ways. So we do lots of games, and we actually show movies that are related to grief, and we'll come back, like Finding Nemo, and we'll talk about some of the things that were brought out in that movie.
How would you talk to a family, or what would you say to a family who is trying to talk to a young child about death and about losing someone? What recommendations and suggestions would you give them on how to talk to their child?
A lot of it, Amy, depends on the age and the maturity level of the child. You have to look developmentally at where they are. Obviously, you would talk to a 6-year-old very differently than you would a 16-year-old. We have tons of information at our hospice office. There's actually an incredible little booklet called Answers to Children's Questions About Death. And so there's some of those really hard questions like, what happens? Are they sleeping? Or why do good people die? All those hard questions. And so we have lots of information to help with that. One common mistake I see with families is they will often tell younger children that their loved one is just sleeping, that they've fallen asleep. But then the flip side of that is the child can then become terrified of going to sleep because they may be afraid that they won't wake up. So I encourage families to be honest with their children, not give them too much information. Base your responses to them on the questions that they're asking. And be as honest and as very straightforward as you can. Our body dies we die when our body stops working. And so you go through all those things with them. And lots of times spiritual questions come in as well, and they'll ask, well, what happens after they die? So, I just encourage families, be honest and create a loving and accepting environment for those children so that they don't feel bad for asking those questions. And do not be afraid to express emotion to your children. They need to see that when someone dies, that they're missed. So don't be afraid to cry around your kids, and don't act like you're Superwoman or Superman around them. They need to see that you have feelings. That's very good advice. You mentioned a booklet, a pamphlet that you all have that has some of these suggestions in that. Can people find that at the hospice office here? Where are you located? We're at 100 Parkway Drive. It is just off of the Parkway there, Tigers Way. We're right next to the Pulaski County Extension Office. And it's very easily seen from the Parkway there. And you all are having an event there today that we'll talk about when we come back on Mid Mornings with Amy. We're talking to Laura Godby this morning. She is a grief counselor with Hospice of Lake Cumberland. We'll be right back.